Welcome back to It Will Run. I mean, it will run, but it's gonna have to run really hard. At least until the electric is in. I stopped short at the steering on the van just because I need a win. I thought moving on to the engine and at least getting the engine built on the stand would be an easy win, kind of a little confidence moving forward to keep me moving on the project. I've got the block back from the machine shop a couple weeks ago. Actually, I mean, I got everything back. I took a whole week off and told myself that I would spend at least 3 or 4 days out here in the garage and really tackling stuff, getting stuff done. So the very first night I came out to gap the rings, the top compression rings, and realized that they sent me an assorted set that there wasn't more than 2 of any one of the rings, well, except for the scraper rings. The oil rings and the scraper rings were fine, but the top 2 rings were just all assorted. They were all different sizes. I don't know what happened. So the machine shop actually came through and during a holiday and got me rings, the top 2 rings. These are forged JP pistons. So before I actually get started putting the pistons in or the crank or anything, I'm going to just check the ring gap. I'm going to put the rings in each cylinder and check the gap on those before I install them on the pistons. I almost have 0 gap here. No way is that going to be 15 thousandths. That's what I'm shooting for, is 16 thousandths. So if I do decide to put a turbo in this, I've got the pistons that I need, but I've also got the ring clearance that I need for the added heat and expansion from boosting the engine. So I've got all 4 compression rings set in the cylinders, all equal, all at the same exact spot. Oh, and by the way, this is how the cylinders look after bore and hone. This is 30 thousandths over. The cylinders are 30 over. So I've got the rings in here. I was looking for 15 thousandths for turbo. All right, let's go, well, let's just go for the big dog right off the bat here. Here's 16. This would be ideal. Ooh, I would say that's 16. All right, yes. Well, it's really not. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. Do I have a 15? Do I have a 15? Looking for a 15,000. Okay, let's just do 14. All right, so I've got at least 14 thousandths and less than 16, so they're at 15 thousandths. So that's perfect. These are the main bearings I picked up. I don't know how to, these are both very popular companies and I don't know how to say either one of them. Male, I believe, and Clevite. So I don't know if they're Clevite bearings or male bearings. I hope they're male. All right, so I've got the caps torqued down with the plastic gauge on each main journal. So I'm going to remove the caps now and then obviously measure the plastic gauge and see what kind of clearances we're dealing with. Make sure everything's good to go. My torque wrench broke right when I was getting ready to do this. I mean, it didn't break, but it did something it's never done before in the 20 years that I've owned the torque wrench. The nut came off inside, so it basically made it impossible to set the torque on it. So I had to take the handle off. It has 2 nuts in there. It's got a jam nut. So I had to go buy a thin line socket to get inside the handle because a normal socket wouldn't fit. And then I calibrated it with a 3/8 torque wrench. I'll get the gauge out here, but just thought I'd show you what the so far they're all looking about the same. Just checking the plastic gauge here. I'm going with that one. So it's 15 thousandths. Is that 15 thousandths? Be tens, hundreds, thousands. Yeah. So it's actually 1500 thousandths? Either way, we're good. Can I use some assembly lube without getting it all over the floor? And this stuff is stringy, man. This one's got a thrust bearing on it. Keeps the crank from moving forward or backwards. So I'm lubing this one up real well to get that surface also. And this is way too much assembly lube, by the way. I understand that. It's just hard to gauge how much was coming out of that bag. Before I torque these down, I'm just gonna kind of push on that seal a little bit, make sure it's up against the cap. These get torqued down to 90, the main caps. I've got it set at 80 right now. I'm gonna back this off to 50. I'll do all the caps at 50 pounds, or 40. Okay, I'm at 40 foot-pounds. All the arrows are facing forward, and each cap is numbered. I'm gonna torque all these caps down to 90 foot-pounds. The machinist put the oil ring and the 2 scraper rings on. I never did look to see if he clocked them. I would imagine. I mean, he does it every day. Yep, he's got one clocked right here. Yep, and the other one here. So here and here on the 2 scraper rings. This is the second compression ring, the middle ring, and it has a marking. It goes up. It doesn't say up or top or anything, it's just any markings go up. I'm not clocking these yet. I'm going to clock them as I put them in. And this is the top compression ring. And it also has a mark on top showing up. Okay, so all four have got rings now. It's time to put the pistons in. Let's find let's work our way from the back forward. So I'm going to do number 4 first. The caps are marked. You line those two numbers up to orient the cap. I've got the rings clocked. So top compression ring is lined up with this wrist pin over here. I got a scraper ring, and then 180. The second ring is lined up with that wrist pin there. So top 2 rings this way, scraper rings right where the skirt meets the flat area there. I'm going to put some sections of tubing on the rod bolts so they don't scrape the cylinders on their way in. Number 4. There is nothing pointing towards the front of the engine, nothing telling me front or back on the pistons. There's no arrows, no dots, nothing. Okay, battery died. So I got number 4 in, and the rod bolts are actually torqued. So I'm going to bring you along for number 3. I don't know if I showed the same rod bearings as the main bearings, the male or clevite or clevit or mal. They're standard. The crank is all standard, so the main bearings and the rod bearings are both standard. Pulled that bearing up against the crank. Look for my number. My number should be on the other side. It is. Number 3. Number 3. Bearing is in the cap. Put a little lube on the bottom side of the nut there so I get a good torque on it. And these get torqued to 36 foot-pounds. Moving right along. This is number 2 right here. Grab the rod and make sure that don't hit nothing. By the way, the pistons are very much need to be oriented like this. I don't know what, I was looking for dots and arrows and marking front, and look at the valve reliefs. So the intake valves are larger. The intake manifold goes over here, the exhaust manifold on the passenger side over here. So I got lucky by orienting them this way, and then I was to the fourth piston, and it was like, well, one relief is larger than the other, so they definitely have to be oriented a certain way. So I kind of got lucky on that. But so larger relief driver's side, smaller relief passenger side, intake, exhaust. Okay, I'm putting in the oil pump and the pickup screen and the shaft, the drive shaft for the oil pump. And before I flip it over, and I'm going to put the head on, but first let's get the oil pump done. Putting in a Melling, made in the USA. Checking the shaft first here. That's the drive shaft for the oil pump. Fits. Long end up, short end down. There it goes. There's no gasket on this. Steel to steel. There's a gasket for the pickup tube, which goes that direction, but not one for the pump itself to the block. Good luck finding a socket for that bolt. It's a 12.5/16, and none of my 3/8 stuff. I have 3/8, 12 point, and 6 point, but none of them go down to 5/16. So then, but then all my quarter, deep sockets, regular sockets, every single one of them's all 6 point. So I'm using an open end wrench or a box end wrench. This back one here is a pain to get to, especially with a wrench. I wish I had a 12.5/16 because I could just go straight down and actually get a torque on it, but I'm just going to make sure it's as tight as I can possibly get it with this wrench. That outside one is easy. This inside one. I got that as tight as I can. Man, with no gasket on there, that's very crucial. All right, I'm gonna put the pickup tube on there. Yep. Putting the head on. I'm using a Felpro gasket. I've got the deck all cleaned up. I've got the head cleaned up. Oh, I've got to get those dowels. I didn't notice he put these in a separate bag when I picked everything up, and they are freaking mangled, man. So I'm guessing they didn't come out so easily. I can probably find a way to straighten those out a little bit. All the returns are lined up nice. It's the oil, pressurized oil port here. I'll set the head on there. It's got some paper towel on there from cleaning it. go. New head bolts. Hey, these are made in the USA. That's one cool thing about building this older engine. It seems like the only manufacturers of parts for it are all USA manufacturers. It's a torque sequence. I used to always put oil on the threads of head bolts before I torqued them. But if you think about it, if you put too much oil on and it starts gathering at the bottom of the boss, you could actually pressurize that oil and crack the block just by torquing that down. So I am not putting any oil on them. Well, okay, maybe a tad. Rather than dipping them in oil like I used to do, I'll just put a touch on them. Well, I'm going to start torquing the head down. It's so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Boom, 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 boom. All right. Okay, I'm starting with 30. Okay, now it's 60. Okay, now 90. Jeez. Trying to keep the engine from tipping over. Done. Head is torqued down. We've got the oil pump drive on. New seal in there, and all cleaned up and everything. And then this is the other part of the auxiliary shaft that connects to the oil pump shaft. I believe that's all I got done since I paused. I'm getting ready to put, there's a piece that runs along the front right here. It's got the seal for the crank, and then some bosses, some threaded provisions in it for the oil pan. So that's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm going to clean this up, put the new seal in right here, the crank seal, and then probably move on to the water pump. And then it'll be almost time to start painting. Okay, I'm getting ready to paint. I've got the oil pan cleaned up the best that I can. I've got the new gasket set in there. I'm not going to put any sealer on. I'm not even going to do the corners. I like this one-piece seal. And it seems to be built up in the corners pretty good. This thing was a pain in the butt to clean. I know that this doesn't look spotless, but this thing was caked. I was scraping all the sludge out with a putty knife first. I got the outside the best that I could. I thought I'd be able to clean it better than this. I had a wire brush, brake cleaner, foamy engine cleaner. I mean, it was terrible. Like even that spot right there. I hit that with brake clean, I hit it with engine cleaner, wire wheel, wire brush. So that's about the best it's gonna get. So I've got the water pump on. This front piece here, I don't know what you'd call it. It's got the crank seal, the auxiliary shaft, the oil pump shaft, and that plate and that seal. So all three seals, front seals, and they're all the same, by the way. I think that's pretty cool that Ford did that. That the cam seal, the oil pump seal, and the crank seal are all the same exact one. I'm gonna put this on. I've got the rods torqued, the mains torqued, oil pump, the pickup tube is tight. I don't think there's any other reason I need to be inside here. All my timing marks are on the front, so I don't really need that for anything. I'll show you what I got here. I've got everything taped off. I'm practicing safe painting here. Anything I don't want painted here, I've got taped off. I don't even like the color that I chose for the engine. I just wanted gray or silver, like basically aluminum color, like a motorcycle engine or like this oil pan. So if I have an oil leak, I see it immediately. I don't want an oil leak. If I do, I don't want it to fester. That's why I'm going with silver. It's just for that fact. I'll be able to see oil running down the side of the engine if it does leak. Protecting all the paint that I did on the van, so I've got the force. Protecting overspray. Oh, I've got to put the oil pan on first. Yeah. There's like 30 oil pan bolts. I didn't count them, but there's a lot. Not that I'm complaining. I'd rather have more than less. Just want to make sure these are started correctly before I go hitting them with the impact. Get a few turns on them. Hopefully this gasket is what dreams are made of. I'm happy with that. Let's paint. This is primer. I've had the paint and the engine setting next to each other for the last 2 hours in front of this heater, and they feel about the same temperature. So I believe I've got them pretty well matched, and it's definitely over 55 degrees in here. This side. got all the primer on it. I'm pretty sure I hit every spot. Yeah, I'm happy with that gray. I like that gray, that primer. Now I'm kind of sad because what I'm getting ready to put on there is I did a little test plate. The bottom of the oil pan has this little plate that's like 5 inches wide, and I used the same primer, and then I used this engine paint that I'm getting ready to use, and I do not like it. It says cast coat aluminum. But man, it looks like fake chrome, like something you would put on wheels that you want to look good from 50 feet away. Man, I just feel like it's gonna look like tin foil. But it ain't about how it looks. It's just to show leaks. But there's not gonna be any leaks. So then why am I doing this color? Here we go. Can you tell it's a metal engine? Well, I know it's not tinfoil. Oh my goodness. It looks like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. Oh yeah. Alright, that's how it's rocking. Don't bother, come on. Some spots I like it, but mostly it just looks silly. I mean, it looks like tinfoil. It's not like I was gonna take it back though. I mean, I sprayed that one little panel, but I wasn't gonna go spend another $15 on a can of paint. So I went with it. Getting ready to start installing everything on the front of the engine. I'm going to do the timing belt. When I used to work in parts stores in the 90s, Gates was always the brand to have. It was made in the USA. And I think like Dayco, people told me that Dayco was a division of Gates, that Gates made Dayco, but Dayco never actually said made in the USA on it, so I was always hesitant. I didn't know. It was just word of mouth, you know, before the internet. There was really no way to tell. But I was happy to see that Gates makes still makes a timing kit for this engine. So it's got a new tensioner. Oh, that says China on it. So the tensioner is made in China. So the belt is still made in the USA. I didn't want to mess around with the crank sensor. You see, I've got so since I recorded last, I've got the oil pump pulley on. I really don't like how hard that's turning, but it doesn't feel bound up. It just feels like maybe just new. And I've got the cam pulley on, and I've got the cover all cleaned up. The crank sensor is not mounted yet because I remember I can't get the guide on. This guide right here needs to go on before this is tightened down. This is a non-interference engine, so I don't have to worry about valves hitting pistons. So right there is my mark for the cam. Oil, this is just oil pump. The distributor there's no distributor because it's a dual plug electronic ignition, so I don't have to worry about this at all. But I can go ahead and get the I can get the crank sensor tightened down now before I put the tensioner on. I want to get that crank lined up. This is something I forgot to do last night. I meant to get these wire wheeled, get them cleaned up and painted. So I still have to do that. See the, I don't know if you call it reluctor, or I'm not sure what you call it, but that crank sensor right there, these metal tangs or sleeves or whatever you want to call them, they ride inside in between there, and then that tells the crank what pistons are coming up to top dead center. And that was broke before. The actual bracket was snapped off and the dowel pin in the back was snapped off. So the old sensor was actually riding on those metal tangs inside of the pulley, and it actually wore away and ruined the old crank sensor. So I picked this up at the junkyard. Another way to tell would be to just place this cover on loosely. And there's a top dead center mark on the cover. Yep, that's what it is. Okay. Yep. I'm exactly at top dead center right now. So it is, that keyway is up, straight up at 12 o'clock. Looks like I already got 5/16 on. That impact sure does get things tight. Now I'll move up to the tensioner. I'm going to tighten up this pin, but I'm going to leave this one fairly loose until I get that pushed over. And I wonder what bolt goes in there. That cannot be the right bolt for that tensioner. The washer isn't even big enough to span the whole gap there. That should be top dead center right there. I am one tooth off. Okay, I'm going to tighten the tensioner right there. I did find the correct bolt for that, by the way. See, it's got the wider washer on it. So that covers that whole slot there on the tensioner. Okay, got that tight. That's already tight. The pin's tight. Just gonna double check. I liked feeling it with my own hand and not just trusting that impact driver. Okay, so there's the exhaust stroke. And the crank is at 12 o'clock, so that's top dead center. Boom, boom. All right. Put the thermostat and the water neck in. Don't moto rad. I got a 180-degree thermostat. So this lets the water out, so that's got to go in there like this. Yep, sits in there just like that. So this is tight. I've got these two tight. I've got these two tight. This is tight. Tensioner, tensioner, tensioner. Timed. Tight, 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 tight. Not sure where this clip right here goes. That obviously clips onto something, or it shares a bolt with something. I don't know if it's right there. Looks like it. It might even run up and like connect onto the intake. It might even run up straight up like this and connect to one of these. So I'm gonna let that hang. It's been hanging around this town in the corner. All right, I just got the pulleys put on there. I just did a little, I didn't sand those down and prime them. All I did was clean them up and then paint them because the original paint or powder coating or whatever was pretty good on it. So I still didn't get the valve cover put on yet, so haven't got a lot done since the last time I was out. But now I've decided I'm going to work on this motor mount, and the closer of the two is definitely the driver's side. So you can kind of see, if you look alongside here, see where the motor mount's got to sit, and this is right in the middle right now. So we're basically right up against the block. I've got to be like this close to the block. So I've got this all marked out. I've got to cut that portion out on one side. I'm going to cut that portion out on the other side and see if that gets me close enough. I'm just, you know, I don't have any money in these motor mounts. These motor mounts were still attached to the block when I bought it, so I don't have anything invested in these. They're not worth anything. So if I cut them up and they still don't work and I've got to go to plan C, then so be it. But I'm at least going to try this the cheapest way first possible. The cheapest possible way first. See, I'm a little light right here. Oh well. You've got to keep in mind how this is oriented. Okay, this is the orientation here. Bolts go out away from the bracket. So the plan is I'm going to cut right on that line, and then this is going to get welded up here. See, I've got to remove all this in order to get that to sit in there. Okay, it touches. bottom is still tight there, so I'm gonna do the whole inside here because I think I'm gonna put a piece of metal on the inside there, so I'll end up grinding that spot back down because I got enough room to slide a piece of metal in there alongside that nut there. Little pop. Now doesn't know. Too much more cleaning to do on it before I can paint it, really. But I'll make sure it works on there. Alright, I got the valve cover all painted. Came out decent. It's got a pretty deep scratch right here. That's not in the paint, that's actually under in the metal. And then a spot back here that just would not accept paint. Probably can't see that. But oh well, it's protected. It's not actually bolted down yet, and in fact I still have the towel over top of it, so I'm gonna unpeel that towel and get this valve cover paint or installed. I've got to clean that gasket surface there. I've got some primer that came up underneath it, so it's gonna rough that up a little bit. And I'm not going to prime this engine oil. I'm not going to prime the oil pump until I'm ready to fire it up, because I might have to take this oil filter off a couple times because it's going to be pretty tight fit inside the van. I don't want the oil filter to be full, keep running oil down the side of the engine and all over the ground every time I have to remove it. But I am going to pour a little oil over the cam, just maybe kind of fill some of these valleys. It can sit there. Whatever wants to run down into the pan can, and whatever wants to stay on top of the lifters and on top of the cam, then it'll have a head start. Some kind of super masking tape. Must have got some brake clean on it or something. It kind of melted the tape to the metal, maybe. Or it's the fact that it's 10 degrees outside. I'll probably end up running synthetic in this, but the first oil change I'm going to do after like 100 miles, so I just got the cheaper, I mean I like Rotella, but this was the cheapest oil they had. Sit on top of the valves as it wants to. I did get the plugs in, by the way. I got all 8 plugs in. Gapped them at 44 thousandths. If I go turbo, then I'll have to change that. I believe it was for turbo, I think it was 38 thousandths. This is the gasket kit that I got. It's Apex Automotive Parts 15 or AFS 4023. These are the gaskets I haven't used so far. But then I've got the exhaust gasket and the intake gasket. Won't need the valve seals because he put new valve seals in it at the machine shop. So the only thing I didn't use out of this kit was the head gasket that came with this kit. I just really like Felpro, so that was the only reason. I got a Felpro head gasket and I didn't use this Apex gasket. It probably would have been fine. I wouldn't be surprised if it's made out of the same exact material with the same exact specs. Oh, check this out. And that's a locator. It goes right in the top of that cam bearing. This thing is really squishy. It's real pliable. Like you can dig your fingernail right into it if you're into that type of thing. I think it needs stretched a little. Keeps wanting to return. I'm not doing any sealer on this whatsoever. Not little dabs in the corners, nothing. I'm gonna let the gasket do its job. Got the bolts cleaned up. There's 8 of them. These are actually offset a little. Like this. I mean the corners are obviously directly across from each other. These do have little metal collets or spacers impregnated in the gasket to keep you from over torquing it and smashing it out. Alright, this is what I'm doing today. I'm gonna clean up this intake, take the injectors off, and I've got some big pipe cleaners. I'm gonna see if I can get those ports cleaned up a little better. And just get the exterior, get the outside of it cleaned up as much as I can. I'm not gonna paint it. I'm kind of worried about cleaning around this ignition module right here. Can't remove it because I bet there's some kind of heat sink compound or something in there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not gonna film it. Nobody cares about something getting cleaned. I didn't exactly get too crazy with it. Didn't spend too much time on it, but I've got it cleaned up enough for my liking. Alright, I think I'm gonna put this on. There's nothing holding me back. Ugh. I'm gonna get the intake put on here. This is supposed to go here on the back side of the intake to lift the engine, but when this ends up in the van, I have to put it in from inside of the van. From the passenger side. The area on the van back here is going to be right here, so I think that's going to it's going to keep me from being able to bring the engine far enough forward. I'm going to see if I can put it on these two, bring that back so I can hook my chain on here, come over to the other side, not interfere with the firewall there. I don't know if it'll work yet, but I don't see any reason why it won't. I can't think of anything that was up here. The coil packs are on the other side, so I don't think there's anything that goes right. Yeah, the throttle body. yeah, it'll still be fine. That's smart. Alright, I'll just start these. I know the whole bottom row can go in. Is there any issue with this? Don't believe there is. I should grab that throttle body though and just check. Oh, you kidding me? I think I'm gonna do that. Not as shiny as the engine, not perfectly clean. I could have got in here and got this fuel pressure regulator better. I don't know, I might take a little something there, but again, I gotta quit getting out of hand here. This is not a show van. I'm not even gonna be eager to show people this engine. I just have this dream where if I ever have to work on it, I don't get dirty when I work on it. That everything is clean, everything. Got the motor mounts painted. Really hope I don't regret that, because I still don't know if there's a good chance that the motor is sitting, the engine is sitting up too high away from the cross member, which is going to cause problems with the transmission. The transmission sitting too high, not being able to get the right tail shaft angle. So I might have just derustified and painted these motor mounts, and I'm not going to be able to use them. So that's what I'm going to find out today. I'm going to put the engine in the van and check angles and see if this is going to work. If not, then I've got to make my own cradle to get the engine to sit down closer to the cross member. But no matter what, this side's going to be a problem. Getting the power steering pump and everything, this side of the engine sticks out too far. If I move the entire engine over towards the passenger side, then my drive shaft is way off, too far over to the passenger side, and it's gonna run at an angle, which, you know, no good. So I'm gonna get these motor mounts, get the brackets remounted to the block, and probably put the actual dampers on the cradle so I can just set it down and then put the 2 bolts, the 4 bolts that tie the brackets into the motor mounts. Got the chain on. I'm ready to set this in. I think I'm going to take this dipstick out so it doesn't get all bent up. Zero oil. Gonna get the engine off of the stand first. Those suckers are wore out. Maybe I can get like a 12. I turned a broken ratchet in to Lowe's. Got a brand new one. I've used this thing like 5 times. It locks up. The reason I didn't continue to build the engine on the stand is because I'm afraid it's getting too wide. Who would have thought that a 93 Mustang engine, 4-cylinder, wouldn't fit in a 73 that had a V8? I guess I should have, but so my problem is width and height. And you don't realize how long these legs are on the cherry picker until you try to maneuver around a little. Oh, jeez. That was a lot looser than I thought it was. Ugh. See if we can not do that again. I had a remote control for the cherry picker. It worked. see what's going on. It's hitting something. I think it's hitting the motor mount on the other side. Yep, it is. There. All right. Yep, I need a helper. Tighten that motor mount a little bit. See if I can get that to stay upward instead of sliding down in that slot. I think this is a self-locking nut on here. The threads are definitely clean, it's just the nut's doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, that one's held up. Might as well just do the same thing to the other one, but I won't tighten it as much. Man, that's slow turning there. Let's see how we're doing. Dang! Driver's side darn near sat right where it needs to be. In fact, I'm gonna put one bolt in there right now. Man, that really sits back. Long bolts. Driver's side is tight. All right, that'll work. I don't want that completely tight yet. I'll get that other one. Yes. I always knew something would go right in my life. I don't know if the doghouse is gonna clear that. Definitely can't get the power steering pump on there.